One of the topics that seems to always come up with every single show is someone asking, who's the greatest chess player of all time? And it makes sense because everybody always wants to know who's the best. Can we really answer this question?
No, but we can definitely ask it often, right? Greatest of all times. I mean, it's impossible to compare because of the generation gaps. And the idea is that chess is making progress. Every decade, chess advances. And our understanding of endgames, our openings, our understanding that certain positions are playable that we didn't know in the past were playable. The players today really stand on the shoulders of giants. And essentially, yeah, they're the best players the world has ever seen. But the question is, who's the greatest of all time? And we all have our personal favorites. Okay, come on, Maurice, you and I, we grew up in the United States. I mean, Bobby Fischer.
Sorry, I like Mikhail Tal.
Yeah,
Tal's my dude.
Okay.
I mean, I love him. That swashbuckling style, straight out of Brooklyn. He could hang with us in BK any day.
Hey, but wait a minute, Bobby, Brooklyn, come on.
That is true.
Hello,
Bobby is also from Brooklyn. What's up with the great players from Brooklyn?
I'm telling you, there you go. So I sit there and I go, for me personally, watching what Anatoly Karpov did. Anatoly Karpov had a chip on his shoulder. He won the world championship title by forfeit. So he was constantly standing in the shadow of Bobby Fischer. Yeah. That was a good event you just had, Talia, but you're no Bobby Fischer. I'm going to go out and win another tournament. And so Anatoly had like one of the greatest 10-year periods of any world champion ever. He just won everything, just everything. World championships, everything. And you go, oh, wow, that guy was really, really good. And then you thought at a certain moment, well, Anatoly Karpov will never be beaten. The guy loses like one game a year, Maurice. One game a year, 2 games a year, tops. Along comes this force of nature, Garry Kasparov. Garry Kasparov, holy cow. He becomes the world's #1 player, plays 5 World Championship matches with Anatoly Karpov.
Epic matches.
The
greatest series of World Championship matches ever seen.
Ever
Two
seen.
players just punching each other in the face.
Exactly.
And in the end, being this far apart in their scores.
Right. But Garry keeps number one rating for 20 years. How can he not be the greatest player ever? And then Garry, at really the height of his powers, the year 2000, the world is stunned. He loses to his protege, Vladimir Kramnik, who goes on and also has quite a remarkably successful career. So the greatest of all times? Well, obviously it's Magnus Carlsen, isn't it, right? I mean, because this is the argument. He's making a hell of an argument, Maurice.
Now, is this something of a recency bias? Because we have mentioned people who are within the window of our generation,
right,
if you will. And we need to argue for players like a Morphy,
right,
players like Capablanca. I mean, natural geniuses that basically didn't even study chess. The moves just magically came out of their fingertips.
Exactly. But the problem is, when you go back to the Emanuel Laskers and the Capablancas and the Alexander Alekines of the world, you realize that was a space and time when they weren't really professionals. I mean, they played 1-2 tournaments a year. I mean, certainly they derived incomes from their professions, but for Capablanca, he was really an ambassador of Cuba. That was really what he achieved, was this certainty of having a steady paycheck by being the ambassador of Cuba. Being world champion was really, really hit and miss, and that was so obvious when the World War IIs came along. Those wars disrupted everything. And it was only after World War II that the FIDE, the World Chess Federation, really started sanctioning the World Championship match cycle and saying, you have to play this challenger. So, for example, Alexander Alekhine, he dies while being the world champion, and the FIDE convenes, and they approve a motion that recognizes Max Erva as the world champion. That was approved.
Really?
FIDE,
I was not aware of this.
Yeah, FIDE approved that Max Erva was declared world champion. End of story. 24 hours later, the Soviet delegation arrives at the FIDE meeting, and they said, look, we missed our flight, we did this, can we reopen this discussion as to who the world champion is? And that was where Avro was born. And it was Max Erva saying, fair enough, I don't want you to declare me world champion.
Pretty remarkable gentleman from Holland.
Right. Then you go back and you study some of the games. I will tell you, that guy Vasily Smyslov was amazing. Go look at Smyslov's best games. The guy played everything. He really did. He played E4, D4, Knight F3, G3. Everything you want is white. Everything you want is black. And the guy's attitude was, when he's black, you play 40 good moves as white, you got your draw.
Good luck with that.
That's who Vasily Smyslov was. He was a marvelous world champion who was way overshadowed by Michael Botvinnik, who kept the title for so many years. And then what you said, the force of nature. I mean, come on. I mean, Michael Tal and his combinations, he just lit the world on fire. It's just amazing.
Yes, all the champions brought something to chess, but certainly the argument is now, is Magnus
Right.
going to be considered the best of all time? It's impossible for him to say it. I mean, I guess he could just say it.
Right.
He's crushing everybody.
Right.
It looks like he's at the peak of his powers.
7 tournament win
He's
streak.
winning tournament after tournament after tournament.
Right.
What will he need to do in order to make the world say, this guy is ahead even of Kasparov and Fischer?
Basically, what Magnus has to do is keep doing what Magnus is doing. And yeah, he's going to have that title, because for me, the 20 years, you know how competitive is chess. Oh, so brutal. And once you get to the top, how tough it is to beat and maintain and hold that championship. Garry Kasparov does it for 20 years. He's world's #1 player for 20 years. He may not be world champion that whole 20 year, but #1? Now
15 of those years, he was the world champion.
And there you go. And now you've got Magnus being world's #1 from, what are we going to say, 2010 or thereabouts? So, and he's right at his peak right now. He's won 7 tournaments in a row. He's played 4 world championship matches, won them. If he maintains and does what he's been doing for the next 3, 4 world championship match cycles.
So you're saying another 8 years. You need to see another 8 years. Even if he breaks 2,900 and goes up near 2,950, that's not going to satisfy you. He separates himself. Right now, he's way head and shoulders ahead of the other players. Even that's not enough.
You had to play in a tournament with Garry Kasparov to understand what I'm talking about here. I mean, maybe I'm still carrying the scars. I don't know what it is, Maurice. A recency bias, you say? Yeah, those scars are still fresh. There was 2 tournaments in the world, and I think it's beginning to feel that way. There were 2 types of chess tournaments in the world when I was playing. Those that featured Garry Kasparov and those that didn't. That was it. Okay, now, when Magnus Carlsen sits down and plays in the Sinquefield Cup, that Sinquefield Cup feels a lot more electric when Magnus is here and when he's not.
And I think that there are also more wins, more excellent play, at least from the players, because they're inspired by the presence of a Magnus Carlsen. And you feel like there's an order in the chess world when he's sitting in the tournament.
Indeed, there is a kind of an order. I don't know if it inspires the victories or losses. It definitely is inspiring. You know that on next Thursday, you get to play Magnus Carlsen, and the whole world, the spotlight is on your board because you'll be up against the world's best player. I think that definitely brings out the fighting spirit, it's ethereal. It's very hard to capture. But I have to say, when Garry Kasparov was at his primal best. I mean, he was like a caged beast. You know, this was a monster player. And what he did was Fisher-esque. He would run up scores that you just said, no, that's impossible. And Garry is telling me about one particular GMA event that he won in France, where he gave me a score, and I go, nah, you didn't do that. He said, but Yasser, I lost the game too. He was like +9. I mean, and Magnus is getting there, trust me. But if he holds that world title, and that's so important to everything, right? Because that's pivotal. That's what your whole career is going to be measured against. And he wins more Grand Chess Tours and dominates tournaments like he's been doing. He's gonna win that title.
The argument continues. The greatest ever. Lots of people will be debating that one. It's like Michael or LeBron.
Yeah.
And we'll keep it up in chess. But for sure, we know we've had some great chess champions.
No question.